The peaceful invitation. The first sign appeared on a quiet Thursday morning when the Deep Space Monitoring Station at Arecibo detected something impossible. Captain Sarah Chen received the call at her office in the United Nations Space Command, headquarters in Geneva. The voice on the other end belonged to Dr. James Morrison, and he sounded like a man who had seen a ghost. "Captain, you need to see this immediately. We've got 15 massive structures approaching the outer solar system. They're not asteroids, they're not comets, and they're definitely not human." Sarah had trained for this moment her entire career. As Earth's leading xenobiologist and head of the First Contact Protocol Division, she had spent 20 years preparing for the day humanity would meet another intelligent species. She had run simulations, studied theoretical physics, and even learned meditation techniques to stay calm under pressure. None of that preparation had prepared her for the butterflies in her stomach as she rushed to the monitoring station. The objects were beautiful in their alien elegance. 15 ships, each one the size of Manhattan, drifted silently past Neptune's orbit. Their hulls shimmered with colors that had no names in human language, and they moved with the fluid grace of sea creatures swimming through the cosmic void. More importantly, they showed no signs of aggression. No weapon signatures, no threatening formations, just a peaceful procession toward the inner solar system. The message came 3 hours later, broadcast simultaneously in English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, and dozens of other human languages. The translation was perfect, which should have been the first warning sign. "Greetings, children of Terra. We are the Serenity Coalition, guardians of peace in this spiral arm of the galaxy. We have observed your world from afar and believe the time has come for formal contact. We come bearing gifts of knowledge, technology, and most importantly, an invitation to join the greater galactic community." The voice belonged to something calling itself High Chancellor Zephyr. When the holographic image appeared on screens around the world, humanity got its first look at an alien being. Zephyr stood nearly 8 feet tall, with a sleek insectoid body covered in iridescent chitin that shifted between deep purple and brilliant gold. Its 4 arms moved with graceful precision, and its large compound eyes seemed to sparkle with genuine warmth and intelligence. "Your species has reached a crucial point in its development," Zephyr continued. "You have begun to reach for the stars, to question your place in the universe. We have seen this pattern before in many species. It is the moment when a civilization must choose between isolation and growth, between the primitive struggles of a single world and the enlightened cooperation of many." Sarah found herself appointed as Earth's chief negotiator, working alongside a team of linguists, scientists, and diplomats. The aliens had established a meeting facility in Earth's orbital space, a structure that assembled itself from what appeared to be liquid metal and crystallized energy. It was beautiful, functional, and completely impossible by human understanding of physics. The first face-to-face meeting took place a week after initial contact. Sarah stepped aboard the alien station, wearing her best diplomatic uniform, her heart racing despite her years of training. The station's interior was a marvel of organic architecture, with corridors that curved like the inside of a seashell, and walls that seemed to pulse gently with their own inner light. High Chancellor Zephyr waited in what could only be described as a garden. Plants from dozens of different worlds created a riot of colors and shapes that shouldn't have been able to coexist. The air smelled of jasmine and something else, something sweet and electric that made Sarah's skin tingle. "Welcome, Captain Chen," Zephyr said, its voice somehow managing to convey both authority and genuine warmth. "I hope you will forgive the unconventional meeting space. We have found that natural environments promote better understanding between species." Beside Zephyr stood another alien, this one even more exotic. Ambassador Lyra belonged to a species called the Resonant, beings that appeared to be made entirely of living crystal. She stood 7 feet tall, her body composed of interlocking, geometric shapes that caught and refracted light in mesmerizing patterns. When she spoke, her voice rang like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Your world is remarkable, Captain Chen," Lyra said. "We have studied your art, your music, your literature. Such creativity arising from such a harsh environment is unprecedented. in our experience. Harsh environment? Sarah asked, confused. Earth seemed perfectly normal to her. Zephyr's compound eyes shifted, what Sarah was learning to recognize as a sign of surprise. Captain, your world experiences dramatic temperature variations, violent weather patterns, tectonic instability, and radiation levels that would be lethal to most galactic species. The fact that life not only survived but flourished on Terra is extraordinary. Most worlds that produce sapient life are far more gentle. Over the following days, Sarah met representatives from the other coalition species. There were the drifters, beings of pure energy that inhabited mechanical shells. The gardeners resembled walking trees, their bark-like skin covered in leaves that changed color with their emotions. The builders looked like oversized otters but possessed mathematical minds that could calculate the stress patterns of entire star systems. Each species brought gifts. The resonant offered information storage, crystals that could hold the entire contents of human libraries in devices no larger than a grain of sand. The drifters shared clean energy technology that could power entire cities without any environmental impact. The gardeners provided agricultural techniques that could feed billions while actually improving soil health. This is incredible, Sarah reported to the UN Security Council during one of her regular briefings. They're offering us solutions to climate change, world hunger, energy crises, even disease. Their medical technology could extend human lifespan by centuries. President Martinez of the United States leaned forward. What do they want in return? That's what's puzzling, Sarah admitted. They claim they only want friendship and cooperation. They say humanity's creativity and unique perspective would benefit the entire coalition. General Marcus Rivera, Earth's top military strategist, spoke from his seat at the end of the table. Nobody gives away this much technology for free. What's the catch? The catch became apparent during the third week of negotiations. High Chancellor Zephyr invited Sarah to tour one of the coalition worlds via their transportation technology. The journey through what they called a fold space corridor took only minutes, but carried her to a planet orbiting a star 47 light-years from Earth. Paradise World Designation Harmony 7 was everything Earth was not. The climate was perfectly stable, with gentle rains that fell on schedule and temperatures that varied by no more than a few degrees throughout the year. The landscape was a carefully managed garden where every plant had been selected for beauty and utility. Cities floated gracefully above the surface, their inhabitants moving through them in peaceful contemplation or artistic endeavors. This could be humanity's future, Zephyr explained as they walked through a crystal garden where resonant artists shaped living light into sculptures. We have 17 worlds like this one, each adapted for different coalition species. We could prepare one specifically for human needs. Sarah admired the beauty around her, but something felt wrong. What happened to the original inhabitants of these worlds? There were none, Lyra answered, her crystalline form refracting the artificial sunlight. These worlds were sterile when we found them. We brought life to them, created ecosystems designed for optimal happiness and productivity. But what about the species that prefer their original worlds? Zephyr's compound eyes shifted again, this time in what Sarah was learning to recognize as confusion. Why would anyone prefer a harsh, unstable environment when they could have perfection? All coalition species eventually chose to leave their birth worlds behind. It is part of the evolution from primitive struggle to enlightened cooperation. The conversation continued for hours, but Sarah began to understand the true nature of the coalition's offer. They didn't want to share the galaxy with humanity. They wanted to save humanity from itself by moving everyone to carefully controlled paradise worlds where conflict would become impossible because there would be nothing left to fight about. We appreciate the offer, Sarah said carefully. But humanity is quite attached to Earth. It's our home. Attachment to suffering is a common phase in species development, Zephyr replied with what seemed like genuine sympathy. The transition can be difficult, but it is necessary for true peace. Perhaps we could begin with voluntary relocation. Those humans who wish to embrace enlightenment could join us, while others could remain on Terra until they are ready. Sarah returned to Earth with a growing sense of unease. The Coalition's gifts continued to arrive, and their technology was indeed miraculous. Human scientists worked around the clock to understand devices that seemed to operate on principles that challenged the laws of physics. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading physicist, led a team trying to reverse engineer a simple medical scanner. "It's impossible," she told Sarah during one of their meetings. "This device can diagnose and treat cellular damage at the molecular level, but we can't figure out how it works. It's like trying to understand a computer by looking at the light coming from its screen." The breakthrough came accidentally. Dr. Vasquez's team was working late one night when a power surge caused their laboratory equipment to overload. The alien medical scanner, which had been running continuously for days, suddenly began behaving erratically. Instead of its usual gentle humming, it started emitting harsh electronic shrieks and flashing warning symbols. "It's trying to communicate with something," realized Dr. Thompson, one of Elena's assistants. "The power surge must have triggered some kind of distress protocol." They managed to establish a crude interface between the scanner and their computer systems. What they found chilled them to the bone. The device wasn't just a medical scanner. It was also a monitoring system, recording detailed biological and psychological profiles of every human it examined. Those profiles were being transmitted somewhere. Sarah confronted High Chancellor Zephyr the next day. "You've been studying us without our consent." "We study all potential coalition members," Zephyr replied without apparent shame. "How else can we determine the best approach for their integration? Your species presents unique challenges." "What kind of challenges?" Zephyr was quiet for a long moment, his compound eyes shifting through several color changes. "Your people are remarkably adaptable, Captain Chen. Most species that develop on harsh worlds either become extinct or develop rigid survival protocols. Humans have done neither. You adapt, you innovate, you even seem to thrive under pressure. It is unprecedented." "That sounds like a good thing." "Perhaps, but it also makes you unpredictable. Coalition peace depends on predictability, on all species following established patterns of behavior. Humans do not follow patterns. You create new ones." The conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert. One of the coalition ships orbiting Earth had suffered what appeared to be a catastrophic system failure. The vessel, a sleek research ship crewed by 24 aliens, was spinning out of control and leaking atmosphere. Human rescue ships responded immediately. Captain Lisa Park, commanding the rescue vessel Endeavour, managed to dock with the failing alien ship despite its erratic rotation. Her crew, trained for emergency situations in Earth's hazardous orbital environment, worked quickly to evacuate the alien survivors. The rescue should have been a moment of triumph, proof of the cooperation possible between species. Instead, it became the spark that ignited everything that followed. 8 of the rescued aliens died despite human medical efforts. Dr. Sarah Kim, the chief medical officer aboard the Endeavour, worked desperately to save them, but human medicine was simply not equipped to handle alien physiology. High Chancellor Zephyr's reaction was swift and final. "This incident demonstrates the fundamental incompatibility between our species," he announced during an emergency session. "Human medical procedures killed 8 coalition citizens. Your rescue attempt, though well-intentioned, was catastrophically unsuitable for our biology." Sarah tried to explain that the humans had acted to save lives, that without their intervention all the aliens would have died. But Zephyr was no longer listening to reason. "The coalition has reached a decision," he announced. "Humanity will be offered one final choice. You may accept voluntary relocation to prepared worlds where you will be guided toward proper development, or you will be classified as a threat to galactic peace and dealt with accordingly. And if we refuse both options?" Zephyr's compound eyes shifted to a color Sarah had never seen before, something dark and ominous. "That would be unfortunate for everyone involved." The ultimatum was delivered to Earth's governments 24 hours later. Humanity had 72 hours to decide its fate: accept guided evolution under coalition supervision, or face the consequences of being labeled a galactic threat. President Martinez called an emergency session of the United Nations. Representatives from every nation gathered to debate humanity's response. The discussion was brief and unanimous. "We decline your offer," Sarah transmitted to the coalition fleet. Humanity will remain on Earth and determine its own destiny. Hi. Chancellor Zephyr's response came immediately. Your refusal has been noted and was anticipated. The Serenity Coalition cannot allow a violent, unpredictable species to threaten galactic peace. Purification protocols will commence in 6 hours. As the transmission ended, Sarah looked up at the night sky, where 15 alien ships hung like distant stars. They had come offering peace, but their definition of peace required humanity to stop being human. That was a price no one on Earth was willing to pay. The war for humanity's future was about to begin. When Deathworlders unite, the first wave of the Coalition's purification campaign began exactly 6 hours after humanity's refusal. Sarah Chen watched from the UN Space Command bunker deep beneath Geneva as alien ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. They moved with the same graceful precision they had shown during their peaceful arrival. But now, that grace carried a sinister purpose. General Marcus Rivera stood beside her, his weathered face grim as he studied the tactical displays. At 62, Rivera had commanded military operations on 4 continents and in the orbital stations around Earth. He had faced human enemies who understood strategy, politics, and the brutal mathematics of warfare. But this was different. They're not even trying to hide their approach, he observed, watching the alien vessels descend toward major population centers. No evasive maneuvers, no defensive formations. It's like they expect us to just surrender. The first target was Sydney. 3 coalition ships hovered over the city's harbor, their hulls shimmering with the same beautiful colors that had once seemed so welcoming. High Chancellor Zephyr's voice echoed across every communication channel on Earth. Citizens of Terra, the purification of your species begins now. Those who submit peacefully will be transported to prepared worlds where you will learn to live without violence. Those who resist will be corrected. The ships began emitting a low-frequency hum that seemed to resonate in people's bones. Across Sydney, humans began collapsing as the alien technology attempted to render them unconscious. It was meant to be a gentle process, Sarah realized. The Coalition genuinely believed they were saving humanity from itself. But the aliens had made a critical error in their assumptions about human physiology. The sonic pacification field worked perfectly on Coalition species, whose nervous systems had evolved on stable, peaceful worlds. Human brains, shaped by millions of years of survival on a chaotic death world, proved remarkably resistant to the alien technology. Instead of falling unconscious, most humans simply got very angry. The rebellion began in the suburbs of Sydney, when a group of construction workers, their heads ringing from the alien frequency, picked up their tools and started throwing chunks of concrete at the nearest Coalition ship. The improvised projectiles shouldn't have caused any damage to vessels designed for interstellar travel, but the aliens hadn't considered Earth's gravity. Those chunks of concrete struck the ship's hull with the force of artillery shells. General Rivera watched the tactical display with growing amazement. They're actually damaging the alien ship with construction debris. Similar scenes erupted across the globe. In Tokyo, a group of teenagers used improvised slingshots and baseball bats to attack alien landing parties. In London, construction crews modified their equipment into weapons. In New York, police officers discovered that their standard-issue firearms could penetrate alien personal shields. Dr. Elena Vasquez, working frantically in her laboratory, made the discovery that would change everything. Their technology is designed for predictable environments, she explained to Sarah over a secure communication link. Everything they build assumes stable conditions, controlled variables. But Earth isn't stable. Our gravity fluctuates. Our electromagnetic field shifts. Our weather creates constant interference. Their systems can't adapt to chaos. The first major victory came 12 hours into the invasion. Colonel Lisa Park, the same officer who had commanded the rescue of Coalition survivors, now led a desperate defense of the orbital platforms above, North America. The aliens had expected to capture the stations intact, using them as staging areas for the planetary purification. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that didn't follow any logical tactical doctrine. Park's forces abandoned traditional formations and used the orbital debris field around Earth as cover. They fired from unexpected angles, used the planet's magnetic field to mask their approach, and when ammunition ran low, they improvised weapons from construction equipment and civilian spacecraft. "This is madness," transmitted the Coalition commander as Park's forces swarmed his ships like angry wasps. "Your tactics make no sense. You should not be able to coordinate such chaotic movements." Park's response was picked up by every human listening post on the planet. "Welcome to fighting humans, you alien bastards. We don't play by anyone's rules but our own." The tide began to turn when humanity realized the full extent of the Coalition's weakness. The aliens had built their entire civilization around avoiding conflict, around creating perfectly controlled environments where violence was impossible. They had technology that seemed magical to human eyes, but they had no idea how to use it in actual combat. Dr. Vasquez led a team of scientists in reverse engineering captured alien technology. Working around the clock in hidden laboratories, they began to understand how Coalition devices functioned. More importantly, they learned how to break them. "Their systems are incredibly sophisticated but fragile," Elena explained during a briefing 3 weeks into the war. "It's like they've spent centuries building glass cathedrals when they should have been building bunkers. One electromagnetic pulse in the right frequency can crash an entire ship's systems." General Rivera coordinated the global resistance from his command bunker, but the real leadership came from unexpected places. In Mumbai, a group of software engineers hacked into Coalition communication networks and began feeding them false information. In São Paulo, street artists used their knowledge of urban camouflage to hide resistance cells from alien sensors. In Cairo, archaeologists who understood ancient fortification techniques helped design underground shelters that alien scanners couldn't penetrate. The Coalition's response to human resistance grew increasingly desperate. High Chancellor Zephyr, his once graceful movements now jerky with frustration, announced a new phase of the purification campaign. "The human species has proven more corrupted by violence than anticipated," he transmitted from the flagship orbiting Earth's moon. "Gentle correction has failed. We will now implement forced evolutionary protocols." The bombardment of major cities began on a Monday morning. Coalition ships, their hulls now scarred by human weapons, began targeting population centers with what they called cleansing fire. The weapons didn't explode like human bombs. Instead, they erased everything they touched, turning buildings, people, and entire city blocks into nothing more than empty space. The destruction of Lagos killed 8 million people in 17 minutes. Mumbai followed 6 hours later. Then Cairo, then Mexico City. The aliens were trying to break human will through sheer terror, to force surrender through the threat of total extinction. They had never encountered a species where genocide attempts triggered an evolutionary response. Sarah Chen, now serving as liaison between the military command and the scientific teams, watched the psychological profiles that Dr. Vasquez's team had compiled. "The attacks aren't breaking morale," she reported to General Rivera. "If anything, they're making us more effective." She was right. The Coalition's atrocities had awakened something primal in humanity. Across the globe, humans began fighting with a coordination and intensity that surprised even themselves. Farmers became saboteurs, teachers became strategists, and children learned to spot alien infiltrators by their inability to understand human emotional responses. The breakthrough came when human forces captured an intact Coalition vessel near the ruins of what had been Detroit. The ship's crew, beautiful crystalline beings who had once created art from living light, cowered in terror as human soldiers secured the vessel. "Please," begged the ship's commander, a resonant whose crystal body had turned a deep blue of distress. "We surrender. We meant no harm. We only wanted to help your species evolve." Major Sarah Kim, the same medical officer who had tried to save Coalition survivors at the beginning of the crisis, studied the alien with clinical detachment. "You murdered 40 million humans because we wouldn't let you change us into something else." "We had to," the alien pleaded. "You are Deathworlders. Your very existence threatens the peace we have built. But we see now that we underestimated Your capabilities, please let us withdraw. We will mark your system as quarantined and never return." Major Kim looked at the alien for a long moment. Then she smiled, and there was something in that smile that made the crystalline being's entire body flicker with terror. "No," she said simply. "You wanted to see what Deathworlders can do. Now you're going to get a full demonstration." The captured, Coalition vessel provided humanity with the key to interstellar travel. Dr. Vasquez's team worked with an intensity born of righteous fury to understand and improve upon alien technology. They didn't just reverse engineer Coalition devices, they weaponized them. Within 6 months, human ships began appearing in Coalition space. These weren't the elegant, graceful vessels of the aliens. Human starships looked like they had been cobbled together from scrap metal and pure determination because they had. They were ugly, asymmetrical, and completely unpredictable. They were also devastatingly effective. The first human raid hit a Coalition supply depot in the Centauri system. General Rivera, now commanding humanity's first interstellar fleet, led the attack personally. The alien defenders expected a traditional siege, with formal challenges and negotiations before any fighting began. Instead, they found their shields overwhelmed by projectile weapons that used Newton's laws of motion instead of exotic energy. Human ships rammed Coalition vessels, their crews using their superior understanding of physics and their willingness to take risks that terrified the aliens. "They fight like they're already dead," reported a surviving Coalition officer. "They show no concern for their own safety. How do you defeat an enemy that doesn't fear death?" The answer, as High Chancellor Zephyr soon learned, was that you didn't defeat such an enemy. You survived them if you were lucky. The war that the Coalition had expected to end in days stretched into years. Human forces appeared throughout the galaxy, striking at targets that should have been impossible to reach. They used captured alien technology in ways its creators had never imagined, turning peaceful exploration tools into weapons of unprecedented destruction. More importantly, humanity began to do what it had always done best: adapt and learn. Human scientists studied every alien species they encountered, learning their strengths and weaknesses with the same intensity their ancestors had used to hunt woolly mammoths and survive ice ages. The final battle took place in the Harmony system, where the Coalition had built their capital among the crystal gardens of their first paradise world. High Chancellor Zephyr, his once proud posture now bent with defeat, met with Sarah Chen aboard a human flagship that hung in orbit above the dying remains of Coalition civilization. "We were wrong," he admitted, his compound eyes dim with exhaustion. "We thought we understood what it meant to be a Deathworlder. We thought it simply meant you came from a harsh environment. We never realized it meant you were capable of becoming death itself when threatened." Sarah looked out at the stars where human ships now patrolled space lanes that had known only peace for centuries. "You could have left us alone." "Yes," Zephyr agreed. "But we feared what your species might become if left unchecked. It appears our attempt to prevent that future only ensured it would come to pass. The peace treaty was signed in the ruins of what had been the Coalition's most beautiful city. Humanity, the species that had been deemed too violent for galactic civilization, now found itself the dominant power in their section of the galaxy. Other alien civilizations, watching from the safety of distant stars, took careful note of what had happened to those who had tried to change the Deathworlders of Terra. The message was clear: humanity would be happy to trade, to share knowledge, to cooperate and coexist. But they would do so as equals, as themselves, unchanged and unashamed of what they were. Any species that tried to force evolution upon the children of Earth would learn why the galaxy had never seen anything quite like a human being pushed to the edge of extinction. They had asked for peace, but they had demanded submission. In response, humanity had shown them what Deathworlders were truly capable of when their survival was threatened. The galaxy would never be the same.